Good evening. Welcome to public hearing on a petition from the undersigned voters of the town of Acton. Hereby petition you, the Board of Selectmen, to put the following question on a referendum ballot before the voters on November 6, 2012. Do you favor our state and federal congressional delegations holding hearings in consultation with the National Academy of Science to devise and implement a sustainable energy policy for the nation? This policy, based on peer-reviewed science, should seek to diminish the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and curb the growing instability in the Earth's climate. This petition was received on 8/2/12. The selectmen had it checked by MMA Legal. It was legal, so we then voted to go ahead and put it on the ballot. Tonight is a public hearing to have discussion on the question itself. If anybody has anything they'd like to say about the question, please come to the microphone, address us, and if you have any rebuttal, please also come to the microphone. We want to talk back and forth around the room because we've been getting complaints that people can't hear what's going on cable TV unless the people are up at the podium, because that's where the microphone is. So if anybody would like to come up and present, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Ted.
Welcome.
May I hand out some materials that I was unable to hand out last time?
Absolutely.
Do you folks need copies of the petition?
We got petition. You guys want one?
This is just a recent article that I wanted to share with you that was on a website. It's by a writer, a science writer for the New Yorker magazine that it's apolitical. It brings up some interesting news about what's going on. Sorry, I wasn't able to share this with you last time. That comes along. I'll be brief in my comments tonight. It's late, and we all have a day's work ahead of us tomorrow. This petition was undertaken out of a sense of obligation to my son and hopefully grandson in discussions over the dining room table when my son was studying this issue a year or so ago. It struck me that I'd been kind of whistling in the dark about this. I read the press and I read magazines, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but I thought I was paying attention to the issue. But after listening to some of the things that he was coming across in his studies, it struck me that I had an obligation to him to take some action on behalf of addressing this issue of climate change. So a number of us on the Planning Board and Conservation Committee got together in January and February, a little bit of March of last year, and knocked around some language and some ideas, and this is what we came up with. Should I bother to read this?
Could I just ask for some clarity? The Planning Board and the Conservation Committee are
Members-
not putting this forward.
No, they are not.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure that's clear.
These were members of the board that were concerned about the issue, and when I called them and spoke to them and said I needed...
But they're doing it as individual taxpayers.
Yeah,
they're not
citizens.
doing it as members of the committee.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
They had a concern about the issue as individuals, and they helped me in my thinking to clarify and give rise to this language. If I may, for Bob and Ray's benefit, if I can just go over this language and be patient with me for repetition on the part of the board here. The question, as it will appear to the voters, reads, do you favor our state and federal congressional delegations holding hearings in consultation with the National Academy of Science to devise and implement a sustainable energy policy for the nation. And in parentheses, this policy, based on peer-reviewed science, should seek to diminish the buildup of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and curb the growing instability in the Earth's climate. And a note that we have appended to this in our flyers that we put up around town to publicize this reads, if we see that the scientific consensus is being ignored on an issue of critical national importance, the least we can do is try for clear lines of communication between the scientific community and our policymakers. We may not have the competence to judge the science, but we can read a roadmap and see where the necessary discussion between relevant scientists and policymakers is being clouded by an ideological debate. There's a typo there. This petition merely seeks to engage credible science with our policymakers regarding our national energy policy. That's the meat and potatoes of this whole initiative. We cannot predict the effectiveness of this proposal, nor can we say how long it may take to reach its goal, but we know for sure that without meaningful discussions about the problem and its implications, no solutions will appear. We can hope to make a difference only if we exert the effort. Sincerely, Tom Cashin and friends. After developing this language, we went and spoke to the Conservation Commission in Shapley and Alfred and South Berwick, and we recently met with the Town Council of Sanford Tuesday before last, and had a hearing in front of that committee, and they are going to knock this around amongst themselves and maybe come up with a resolution in support of it. That's what we're hopeful. The status in Alfred is it's going to the voters at their town meeting. In Shapley, it's going to the voters in their town meeting, and yes, it is. And I don't know whether it's going as a referendum question or a warrant article, but
Yeah, it's not on the ballot.
Okay.
They don't have
No,
it.
not in
It's not
November.
going, it's not going on the November ballot for
No,
Shapley.
at the town meeting.
Right.
I don't know at the town meeting whether it's a warrant article or a referendum question. South Berwick is collecting signatures on November 6th, and the status of Sanford is yet to be realized, I guess. In Acton, we tried to put some materials in the library, some copies of a book by the name of, what is the name of that? Excuse me. We purchased some books for the library to hopefully, for folks that were interested in the issue, to share with them what we had learned from a little publication called, with the cheery title of What's the Worst That Could Happen by Greg Craven. And that has a video that has been on the public access channel entitled, I can't remember the title of it. But you can find it on Facebook if you look under Wondering, as in I wonder, Wondering Mind 42. It's listed under that title on Facebook. Little 7-minute video that's kind of an eye-opener. Another good book that has been valuable for my education is another cheery title, Field Notes from a Catastrophe by Elizabeth Colbert, the article of one of those handouts that I gave to you tonight. And a more substantive scientific work entitled Storms of My Grandchildren has been down with the good grace of the librarians at Springvale and Sanford. The author of that is James Hansen, kind of a more scientific work than the other two, but very worthwhile reading. And in trying to educate ourselves about the issue, we've tried to keep abreast of recent articles in Scientific American, one of which recently in the bear with me, July 2012 had a very interesting article about the melting of ice in Antarctic, and that has also been noticed in the Arctic. I'd be happy to take any questions. I'll sit down and see what happens. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Ray Lopez. I'm here to specifically address the question that we're looking at to put on the November 6th ballot.
It's already on. It's already on.
It's already on?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
This is just a public hearing to discuss what the actual question is, what's about, why it's on the ballot.
I have started doing some investigative work on this about 4 or 5 months ago, and I've run across a plethora of scientific studies, and each study talks about global warming, carbon emissions, all that, and not yet have I run across any scientific study to deal with the natural course of the cycle of our planet, the solar system, you know, and all the issues that go in with just the natural phase of things going around. But to look at, you know, putting this on, you know, a consultation with the National Academy of Science, devise and implement sustainable energy policy for the nation. On October 24th, the Portland Press talks about the main key to new regional powerhouse, and they talk about the windmills, and now they were going to be putting in some lines going down by 95 from Maine, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, all using wind and hydro, and all this power is going to be going and being sold out to Massachusetts and other parts of the New England area. So in order to establish a policy, as the question reads here, I mean, I'm sure there's something in play already that they've been doing as far as wind, articles from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Maine deploys its first U.S. commercial grid-connected tidal energy project. We have Sunshot prize competition to install solar energy systems at a fraction of the cost. So I believe that nationally, we already have something in place. Okay? So to me, this question that's going on the ballot, I think that although it's an important issue, it doesn't cover the entire 360 incumbents of what the problem with energy is: renewable, sustainable energy. Because you're looking at energy independence in some states out west here that they're booming because of natural gas, oil, the shale that they're doing, and the majority of the money that's being requested for this new energy, although there's a lot of it that is already in place, is, to me, it's redundant to put it back on there if there's already things that are in place that they're working to do all this type of new energy, you know? So I don't see how putting something like this, you know, so that scientists and everything can have discussion with other people and put policy into place, it's to me, it's like doing something that's already done. Okay, I understand the need to continue to improve, because a lot of the times the turbine engines for the wind power, I don't know if anybody here has seen how they burned down, and they've been combustion. I mean, they did start on fire, and they can't do anything for them because they're up so high. You know, so the water can't reach it, and they just burn. So there's really a lot of focus that needs to be done on this technology of how to improve it versus putting new policy into place. Okay? So all across the nation, we hear about everything, especially with the cap and trade, that has to do with selling carbon emission to companies. To me, it's just another tax. You know, companies are being strapped right now, you know, because of all the policy that is being put into effect by the federal government and what's being forced upon the states, you know, to the point where people don't want to invest. People are saying, well, we need jobs. Well, yeah, you can need jobs, but if there's policy in place that restricts you from doing 80% of the things, who's going to want to start a business? You know, so I don't think that it's really necessary to go to this point. And like I said, as far as science goes, they're looking at it only from one side of the spectrum. They're not looking at the natural causes, the natural effect of what the Earth has gone through over time, the natural warming, cooling, ice age. You go back a couple of years, and they're talking about, well, you know what, it's global warming, and everything's going to heat up and everything. And we see the effects of it in the North Pole, you know, with the ice melting and stuff like that. A little bit later, they talk about, oh, no, we're going to go into a mini ice age, you know. I think that these people putting forth things that are just scaring the populace instead of concentrating on what needs to be focused on, and that's to improve on the systems that are already in place. You know, so I mean, that's my take of the whole situation. If they would take a look at everything and every angle of it, I would say, yeah, you know. But there are policies in place, or these companies would not exist at the moment. All right?
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Roy. Anybody else?
Robert Anderson. What surprises me is that the town attorney says that we can put this on a ballot for the simple reason that somebody submitted a petition for one of their pet projects or something that they have a strong interest in. If all the towns want, or somebody else has a special pet project they're interested in, all it takes is 25 signatures to put on a ballot, when there was other alternatives that they could have done. If it was that.
Can I answer those before we go any further?
Yeah.
As far as getting it on the ballot, you have to have a percentage of the voters that were asked at the last governor's election. And there were 1,026 Acton voters who participated in the last gubernatorial election in November in 2010. And they came up with 119 taxpayers from the town of Acton that signed this petition, which came to us. Our town attorney was not involved in this. We didn't spend any money on a town attorney. We sent the question to MMA for one thing only, to find out whether the question was legal to ask. If the question was not legal, then the selectmen would have denied it. But when 119 voters and taxpayers in the town of Acton asked us to put it on, MMA said it was legal, we put it on, and then the townspeople get to vote on it on election day, whether they're for it or against it.
Right. But it still is 10% of the people that was at the last election is what it is. If you have 1,000, there was only 110, that's about 10% of the people.
119, yeah.
But what it comes down to is, it's somebody's pet project, and everybody has a pet project they're interested in. They had alternatives to send letters to congressmen, legislators, senators, and these hired muckamucks to get something done instead of doing a survey from the Acton residents to see if they're interested in it. If it was that important to the Acton residents, they could have mailed a survey to each house and have them return an answer, but that would cost them money. So instead, we, the taxpayers, pay for this because we have to count the ballots after the elections, and that's costing the taxpayers of Acton about this simple questionnaire of a pet project. I feel if he's that interested in the town vote on this pet project, then maybe he should pay the counters, the time and effort that they take to count his pet project. And that's not fair for the rest of us who's not part of the 110 that have to pay for this, for a pet project that his son brought up. It's a little ridiculous because anybody can do this. If they're going to do it, let them pay the counters for the time they use at the town hall.
Thank you.
I appreciate your
Talk to
concerns.
us, talk to us.
I appreciate the concerns of some of the audience members, Bob in particular, about the
Talk to us.
expense that this is incurring. But I would humbly suggest that democracy and the actions that are taken to sustain it incur expense. And I wish this was as simple as a pet project. If a little bit of research yielded to those of us who are interested in the issue that this is by no means a pet project. This is an issue that is of major national and global importance, and again, it has been ignored at our peril. The farmers in the Midwest, after successive years of drought, I think would take a much more critical view of this issue than maybe we in the Northeast, who have not been impacted to date, except for some erratic climate events. To Mr. Lopez's point, the main thrust of this has been to try and get credible science with the consultation of the National Academy of Sciences to the table with policymakers. What we found, hearings have been held, and but there is a false equivalency made between some of the scientists who have devoted their life to this issue and have given testimony before the House and Senate at the national level. Their testimony is made to seem in the media as of equal credibility to lobbyists for the various energy industry industries at the table, and it goes as far as sometimes a science fiction writer in the past has spent an hour with a former president and was given more credibility than credible scientists who have devoted their lives to this. So we're just merely trying to, as we say, engage credible science with our policymakers so that there can be a rational basis to develop sound policy. The continued burning of fossil fuels is not a sustainable practice that we can keep doing without injuring our climate or incurring more instability in the climate than we have seen to date. And that is based upon 20 to 30 years of research in the field. Do any of the selectmen have any questions for us? No. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. The question will be on the ballot in November, and will be determined whether to go forward from there by the residents of the town of Acton. Thank you all for attending. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor? Good night, folks.